Right now, let's talk more about how the impeachment process could impact the markets and your money. Joining us for that is Ed Mills. He's Washington policy analyst for Raymond James. And so far, it looks like the markets have been shrugging this off, right, Ed?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what you saw yesterday was, very interesting testimony, but you had to spend 5.5 hours to really get into the meat of it. Right now, what the market is pricing in is that the House is more likely than not or near certain to pass articles of impeachment. It moves to the Senate, and the Senate is extremely unlikely, at least at this time, to remove the president from office. And so they are focused on getting through this earnings season, focused on the kind of economic reports that are coming out of the Fed, which generally are pretty good.
Is there a moment, you think, when the markets will sit up and pay more attention, or does it rely entirely on whether or not the Senate would act?
Yeah, I think what we'll be looking for kind of near term is this testimony next week by Ambassador Sondland. He is once again in the center of this, and now with this overheard phone call, he's already updated his testimony once. We'll see if he has to update his testimony a second time. The next thing the market will look at is how many, if any, Republicans side with Democrats in the passage of any impeachment kind of articles of impeachment. And then there will be a speculation on, is that enough to really start breaking kind of the dam wall in the Senate? Certainly, senators like Mitt Romney seem to be more likely than not to possibly side on conviction. Other kind of more senior senators, someone like a Lamar Alexander, who is retiring, a senior statesman in the Senate, he's who I'd be watching in the Senate to see if there's any sort of problem for the president as it relates to kind of conviction and removal.
How do you think this impacts President Trump's reelection potential for next year? Because that might be something the market pays a little more attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good question. It is clear that for the most part, everyone in this country has put on their jerseys, has gone to their side. If you're for Trump, you're against impeachment. If you're against Trump, you're for impeachment. There is a small group in the middle, especially those who are in the suburbs. This is what we learned in last week's election. That's what we learned in the 2018 election, that Republicans and President Trump right now are fairly toxic in the suburbs. And so if impeachment doesn't result in removal, but continues to erode that support in the suburbs for President Trump, that could be a real warning sign for his reelection campaign, especially if those suburbs of Philadelphia, the suburbs in kind of Detroit or kind of Milwaukee, where those are the key three states, in my opinion, for this presidential election, continue to deteriorate for the president. There'll be much more speculation that he'd have a tough time, regardless of the outcome of this impeachment inquiry, for re-election in 2020.
What do you watch for that? Do you believe the polls there?
The polls are going to be very difficult. There's one of the things I'm kind of having a hard time with is the difference between the national polls in the state polls. An average polling error for an incumbent president in the last several elections has been as high as 3%. You add on to the fact that President Trump is very probable to lose the popular vote, but could still win the Electoral College. So there's speculation that he could lose the national vote by as much as 5%, but still have the 270 Electoral College votes to win re-elections. So there'll be conversations that he could be down in the final poll 6 to 8% the day before the election. And if we have an average polling error and we have that dynamic that's taking place on national vote versus the Electoral College vote, people will still give him a fighting chance.
We learned
for
our
that
lesson with
re-election.
that last time.
Yeah.
The numbers showed 99%, and she's ahead by 3, and she might have been ahead by 3, but it didn't
she
matter.
won by 2% nationally.
The other thing that you didn't point out, I think that it's important, is you don't know who the Dem candidate is, and it's pretty funny because generic Dem does well, it's way ahead. But then each one, when you put it, say, oh no, well, not them, not that person, not her, not him, not her. They're much less, and on predicted, he's still 42 cents, and the closest Democrat is who's going to be the next president is Elizabeth Warren at, I think, 18 cents or so. But then if on the same predicted, who's going to win the White House in 2020, a Dem or a Republican, it's like 52% Dem. So it's like weird. When you actually put a name on the Dem, that's when unfortunately for them, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, that's not too far off from where our predictions have been. We do continue, with the strong economy, with the lack of a primary opponent.
Well, who's it going to be?
Generally
who's
gives
the Dem going to be? Buttigieg now? Who do you think, Ed? It's been moving his way.
Well, what I have been focused on more recently is that we are easily on our way towards the first contested convention since 1952.
Really? Hillary steps up.
I think that too.
Hillary steps
I think
up.
that's Bloomberg's play, right?
Maybe
get
him.
to the convention.
No,
Yeah, that's what he thinks. Is that if it's not going to be clean, if it gets
John Kerry,
you just got to get there.
Deval Patrick.
Huh?
Yeah, no, I mean, if
Patrick.
Donald Trump ran under the Democrats' rules, he would have gotten to the convention in 2016 without a majority of the delegates. And so if you do have Bloomberg who steps in, if we have Deval Patrick who steps in, if it is a 3 or 4 kind of candidate race going into Super Tuesday, Democrats, if you get 15% of the vote in any congressional district in this country, you too, Joe, could get a delegate. So you should be in the running.
I don't know what I'd do with it once I got one.
Well, you would be in the conversation come Milwaukee in
He's
July.
now in the race.
What happened to Bloomberg with you? You cutting him loose now like you did Howard Schultz once they say that?
Are you kidding me?
So you still are a Bloomberg. You're a Bloomberg.
I think Bloomberg's terrific.